In this video, we're going to learn how to pin model bases so that we can remove them from the articulator. This way we won't have to keep unscrewing and screwing in the bases as we're working on our case. This is the Welding Pindex machine, which we will use. This is what we generally use in school. This Pindex machine is a manual machine where we can press it down with our hands and the drill bit will pop right through the center. So when we put the model on it, we just push the entire platform down and this will drill a hole into the bottom of the model. The first thing we do is we will mark the models where we're going to make the holes. In the mandibular model, we must make the holes right over the ridges so that we don't make a hole through the base. If we put the holes too far to the middle, then in this particular model, the base is very thin, so the drill will go right through it. I like to make 4 different holes for stability so that when we return the model onto the articulator, we have a very stable base so it doesn't rock back and forth or it doesn't move. We must also make sure that the holes are drilled all the way through. If we don't press down on the base enough, these holes will not be deep enough and thus the pins will not go down all the way. The pins we're going to use for this purpose are the short Welding Pindex pins. And we will put the short side into the model and the long side will be sticking out. On this mandibular, we're going to put the sleeves onto these pins with the wide platform towards the model. And in this way, the pins will come out more easily. They don't need to be too retentive since the mandibular is on the bottom of the articulator. The next one we're going to do is the maxillary. Now in the maxillary, when we drill the holes, we'll have a little more leeway since the pallet allows us for a thicker cast. We still need to give some distance between the pins, however, so that we can preserve the stability of the model when it's returned to the articulator. Here again, we put the pins in with the short side down, but this time when we put the sleeves on, we're going to have the wide platform of the pins facing up. And this is because this is a maxillary model. The sleeves tend to be a lot tighter when they are put upside down. And we want it a little tighter because this is a maxillary model again. And we don't want it to migrate down in case it separates or we separate it from the articulator. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to hand articulate the two models. Make sure everything's parallel so they look aesthetic. And we're going to try it on the articulator to make sure that the pins have enough room at zero setting of the incisal pin. So after we drilled our holes into the model, we can see we drilled 4 of them in each. And this is to keep them stable and evenly anchored to the articulator, and it will also allow us to later remove it from the articulator without having to unscrew the plates like this. So, let's screw this back on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the dowel pins and glue them inside these holes with the short portion out. Glue them inside the holes with the shorter portion in. So to make a little dish for the glue, we can use a little piece of base plate wax, kind of mush it up together. You can take a pencil and push it into the center, and this will create a little well. And in the little well, we're going to place a couple of drops of glue. When we reseal the glue, you have to make sure that the orifice is still open. So we kind of clean the orifice with some paper towels, make it free of glue. So then we can take our little dish and we can dip the dowel pin in the glue and put them one at a time inside the hole, making sure that each pin seats all the way down in the hole. And then, since this is an upper, we're going to take the gray sleeves, and I prefer to put them on the dowel pins upside down, which means there's a little flat area on the top, on the bottom, and this little flat area will be on the outside. So when we push it in, it's going to look like it's upside down. If you want, you can put the sleeves on beforehand. That way it kind of makes it a little bit easier to dip the pins and push them in, since that little flat area gives you a little bit more comfortable area to push on to seat it. So it should look like that. That's the upper. the fact that these are upside down, they are tighter when you put them upside down. So when you have the upper hanging like this, it's not going to slide off the pins. Now we do the lowers. If we notice, the lowers, that flat area is on the bottom. And on the lowers it doesn't really matter because it is seated parallel to the floor and gravity is acting on it. So after we articulate it, even if it is easily detachable, it doesn't matter because gravity is going to pull it down like this. The next thing we have to do is glue the two models together and mount them onto the articulator like so, centering it. Now the easiest way to do that is to use some putty. We have like a rubbery type of putty that we can use, and we can put that right on the bottom part of the articulator. And after we glue the models together, we can push the pins right inside the putty and it will hold it for us so we can mount the top model. Now we're going to glue the two models together. Now we have to make sure that when we glue it together, the models are dry so that the glue from the glue gun will stick to it. If the model is wet, it's going to be very difficult for the glue to stick to it and it might get released. When we glue the models together, we have to hold it steady until the glue solidifies. The good thing about using a glue gun is that once the glue dries, or once the glue solidifies, it's very easy to take off once we wet the model. As we can see, we only need to put 3 dots, 2 in the posterior and 1 in the anterior. You don't want to fill the entire model with glue, because then you may end up breaking some of the teeth when you separate the two models. So we can just put it down until it completely hardens. Okay, so now we check the glue, make sure it's solid. If we push it with our fingernails and we don't leave a mark, that means the glue is solid. We double check the inside to make sure that everything looks like it's correct. And it looks like it is. We seat the model on the articulator according to the Bonwell triangle. The Bonwell triangle was invented by Dr. Bonwell, who was a dentist, and he took the measurements of 5,000 skulls and conducted a statistical analysis on them. So he came up with 110 millimeters in intercondylar distance, which is the distance between the condyles on the right and the left side. He measured the distance of the center of the condyles to the midline between the lower anterior teeth, and that was also 110 millimeters average. And the third average was the average of the distance between the occlusal plane, which is when the teeth occlude or come together, and the center of the condyle right here. And he found that to be 40 millimeters. So, in other words, the occlusal plane is 40 millimeters lower than the center of the condyle.